Nathaniel Doramy held a gold-plated pen that was about to cost him everything. Inside the 50th floor boardroom of Doramy Holdings, the air smelled of expensive cologne and impending victory. Dressed in a sharp, bespoke white suit, Nathaniel looked like a king ready to claim his empire. This multi-billion naira merger with Titanium Industries was supposed to be his legacy, the deal that would make him the most powerful man in Africa. The lawyers were smiling, and the champagne was already poured. Nathaniel leaned forward, ready to sign the document that would change his life forever, but he had no idea he wasn't signing a contract. He was signing a death warrant for his entire life's work. As Nathaniel's gold pen touched the paper, the invisible cleaner, Kate Ogbolu, appeared suddenly as if she was to wipe the table. And her desperate whisper cut through the silence. "Don't sign it, sir. It's a trap." If you're just tuning into this channel, please subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to share with your friends and family, and tell us where you're watching from in the comment section. The pen was a heavy weight in Nathaniel's hand, the gold nib hovering a hair's breadth from the line that would seal his fate. The 5 words Kate had breathed into his ear were still vibrating in the air, invisible to the room but deafening to him. Beside him, Morris Musa leaned in, his smile tight and impatient. "Everything okay, Nate? The world is waiting," he urged, his voice laced with a forced joviality that suddenly sounded like a hiss. Nathaniel froze. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He looked at Locas Mendoza, who sat across from him with an expectant, predatory stillness. Then he looked back at Kate. She was already moving away, her head bowed as she pushed her cleaning cart toward the corner, her hands trembling slightly against the plastic handle. The silence in the boardroom stretched until it became uncomfortable. Nathaniel pulled his hand back, laying the pen down on the polished mahogany with a sharp click that made Mary Albert flinch. "I need 5 minutes," Nathaniel announced, his voice surprisingly cold and steady. The room erupted in a confused murmur. 5 minutes? Now. Morris stammered, his eyes darting toward the contract. 5 minutes, Nathaniel repeated, standing up and smoothing his white suit. "I've just realized there's a clause I haven't fully processed. Clear the room. Now." He didn't wait for an answer as he turned toward the window, watching the Lagos skyline, but his eyes were locked on the reflection of the cleaning lady in the glass. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom had barely clicked shut before Nathaniel found himself in the narrow, dimly lit service corridor. The air here was different, cool, smelling of floor wax and lemon bleach, a sharp contrast to the suffocating luxury he had just fled. He found Kate in the small staff break room, her back to him as she obsessively wiped a plastic countertop that was already spotless. Her shoulders were hunched, a physical weight pressing down on her small frame. "You have 4 minutes left," Nathaniel said, his voice a low rasp. "Tell me everything." Kate turned, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and fierce intelligence. She didn't waste time with apologies. "I was cleaning the executive suite balcony last night," she began, her voice steadying as she spoke. "They didn't see me behind the heavy curtains. Morris and Mary, they weren't talking about a merger, Nathaniel. They were talking about an inheritance." She leaned closer, the intensity in her gaze forcing him to listen. "The titanium contract has a hidden control shift clause in the addendum. Morris has already set up a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The moment you sign, 80% of Doramy Holdings' assets are diverted to that account. Mary isn't here to support you. She's here to collect her cut for keeping you distracted." Nathaniel felt the floor tilt beneath him. "That's impossible. My lawyers reviewed every page." "They didn't review the pages Morris swapped out 10 minutes before the meeting," Kate countered. "I saw him do it." The skepticism in Nathaniel's chest warred with the raw conviction he had seen in Kate's eyes. He didn't return to the boardroom. Instead, he detoured toward the HR department, his strides heavy and hurried. Martha, the head of HR, looked up in shock as her CEO bypassed her desk to access the digital archives himself. Within seconds, Kate Ogbolu's file appeared on the screen, and the air left Nathaniel's lungs. He had expected to find a sparse history of menial labor, but the reality was a staggering blow to his ego. Kate wasn't just a cleaner, she was a ghost of the corporate elite. There, in high-resolution scans, were her credentials, a first-class degree from King's College and a master's in financial engineering. Even more shocking was her employment history. She had been a senior lead analyst at one of the country's most prestigious investment firms, the kind of position people killed for. Nathaniel scrolled deeper, finding a series of redacted notes about a disciplinary exit that smelled of a coordinated smear campaign. The woman currently mopping his floors had once calculated risks for portfolios larger than his own. He realized then that Morris hadn't just chosen a random victim to ignore. He had chosen someone whose brilliance made her the ultimate threat if she ever spoke up. Nathaniel closed the file, the glowing screen reflecting a new dangerous spark in his eyes. He hadn't just found a witness. He had found the only person in the building smart enough to help him dismantle a billion-naira trap. Nathaniel found Kate back in the corridor, her hands gripping a damp microfiber cloth as if it were a lifeline. When he confronted her with the truth of her credentials, the defiance in her eyes softened into a weary, haunting sadness. "A first-class degree doesn't matter when you come from where I come from, Nathaniel," she whispered, the polished walls of the hallway reflecting her exhaustion. "In those high-rise firms, they didn't see my talent. They saw my address. They heard the ghetto in my accent before I even opened my mouth to speak about market trends." She told him how she had been framed by a senior partner who knew she had no connections to protect her, how she had been blacklisted and tossed aside like refuse. "I didn't choose this mop because I lacked ambition," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of a hidden burden. "I chose it because my sister, Loveth, is dying. She has a hole in her heart, and the surgery costs more than I could ever save in a lifetime of cleaning. But this job at Doremi Holdings paid just enough for the deposit on her hospital bed." Nathaniel looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. The woman before him wasn't just a victim of a corporate machine. She was a warrior fighting a silent war for her family's survival. Her desperation hadn't made her weak. It had made her the most honest person in a building full of liars. Kate retreated to the shadows of the executive hallway, her heart still racing from the weight of Nathaniel's gaze. She sought refuge near the heavy velvet drapes of the side lounge, but the sound of hushed, venomous voices froze her in place. Through the gap in the door, she saw Morris and Mary. The celebratory masks they had worn in the boardroom had slipped, revealing something ugly and desperate. "He's stalling, Mary," Morris hissed, his face reddening as he paced the small room. "That cleaning girl," she whispered something to him. I saw his face change. "If she's found a way to show him the modified annex, we're finished before the ink is dry." Mary leaned against the mahogany desk, her eyes cold and calculating as she checked her reflection. "Then we make sure he never believes another word she says. Nathaniel is a man of status. He won't take the side of a common thief." She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a sleek, encrypted USB drive and a thick envelope of marked bills. "Plant these in her locker. By the time the sun sets, she won't be a whistleblower. She'll be a criminal caught red-handed. We'll call security, make a scene, and have her dragged out in handcuffs. Once she's gone, Nathaniel will crawl back to the deal just to move past the scandal." Kate pressed her back against the cold wall, her breath hitching. They weren't just stealing a company. They were prepared to destroy her life and leave Loveth without a savior. The heavy silence of Nathaniel's private office was shattered when the door swung open with a violent thud. Morris marched in, his face a mask of performative betrayal, trailed closely by Mr. Atata, the company's head of security. Mr. Atata's presence was imposing, his uniform crisp and his expression unreadable, while Morris clutched a tablet as if it were a smoking gun. Nathaniel, I'm sorry to interrupt your processing time, but we have a serious problem, Morris declared, his voice booming with forced authority. He slammed the tablet onto the mahogany desk. While you were out here playing the philanthropist with the cleaning staff, one of them was busy robbing you blind. Nathaniel didn't blink. He sat back in his leather chair, watching his best friend's desperate theater. On the screen, a graining black-and-white security feed played. It showed a figure in a cleaning uniform, Kate, leaning over Nathaniel's desk and slipping a sleek USB drive and a thick stack of cash into her apron. The footage was clever, the lighting was dim, and the angles were cropped to hide the digital artifacts of a hurried edit. Mr. Atata found these in her locker 10 minutes ago, Morris continued, his eyes gleaming with malice. She's a thief, Nate. A common criminal who tried to distract you so she could loot the place. I've already authorized Mr. Atata to call the police. He leaned over the desk, his voice dropping to a hiss. This is why you don't listen to the help. Now, sign the deal so we can put this mess behind us. Nathaniel stood up slowly, his shadow lengthening across the desk as he walked toward Morris. Instead of the anger Morris expected, Nathaniel's face was a mask of cold, terrifying disappointment. He placed a hand on Morris's shoulder, leaning in until their foreheads almost touched, and steered him toward the far corner of the office, away from Mr. Atata's earshot. You really should have checked the metadata on those files, Morris, Nathaniel whispered, his voice vibrating with a lethal edge. And you definitely should have checked the hidden cameras I installed in the server room last month. Morris's smug expression flickered, a bead of sweat breaking out on his temple. Nathaniel didn't stop. I know about the 15 million naira bribe you took from Titanium. I know about the Cayman account. And I know that the theft I just saw on that tablet was a digital hack Kate flagged for me 20 minutes ago. Morris tried to pull away, his mouth opening to craft a lie, but Nathaniel's grip tightened. I spent 5 minutes processing the deal, but I spent the next 10 verifying your betrayal. I saw the original contract, Morris. The one you swapped out to strip me of my own company. You didn't just sell out a partner, you sold out a brother. Nathaniel stepped back, his eyes flashing with a finality that made the air in the room turn to ice. The game is over. You're not the one making demands anymore. Nathaniel turned back to the room, his face like granite. With a calm motion, he tapped a key on his laptop, and the boardroom speakers crackled to life. Morris's own voice filled the office, stripped of its friendly facade. The recording was crystal clear. Nathaniel is too blinded by his own ego to see it coming. Once the merger is signed, he'll be a figurehead with zero power, and will be 15 million naira richer before he can even call a lawyer. The color drained from Morris's face, leaving him a sickly shade of gray. Mary Albert stood frozen near the door, her designer bag slipping from her fingers as the sound of her own laughter echoed through the speakers. Mr. Atata stepped forward, not toward Kate, but toward Morris, his hand resting firmly on his handcuffs. You're finished, Morris, Nathaniel said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I'm not just firing you, I'm handing every file, every recording, and every forged document Kate recovered to the authorities. Get them out of my sight. As security led the stunned traitors away, the suffocating tension in the room finally broke. Nathaniel turned to Kate, who stood by her cleaning cart, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. He didn't see a cleaner, he saw the brilliant mind that had saved his empire. Kate, he said, stepping toward her with a look of profound respect. This company doesn't need a new janitor. It needs a chief financial officer who values the truth. The position is yours, and Lovatha's surgery will be paid for in full by the end of the hour. The Lagos sun set behind the glass towers of Dormy Holdings, but the light it cast today felt warmer, reflecting off the faces of hundreds gathered for the launch of the Omoni Oboli Foundation. In the front row, young Lovath sat vibrant and glowing, her laughter a melodic proof of the successful surgery that had given her a second chance at life. The shadows of betrayal had long been cleared. Morris and Mary were serving lengthy sentences for corporate fraud, their names now cautionary tales in the city's financial journals. Nathaniel stood at the podium, his white suit as sharp as ever, but the cold hardness in his eyes had been replaced by a deep, grounded peace. He reached out his hand, and Kate stepped up to join him. She moved with the grace of a woman who no longer had to hide her brilliance in the shadows of a mop. As the company's CFO, she had tripled their growth, but it was her heart that had truly rebuilt the empire. "A year ago, I thought success was measured by the size of a merger," Nathaniel announced, his voice echoing with genuine emotion. "I was wrong. True legacy is found in the voices we choose to hear." He turned to Kate, pulling a ring from his pocket that outshone the city lights. As he asked her to be his partner in life as well as business, the applause was thunderous. They stood together, a titan and a genius, proving that the most powerful force in Lagos wasn't gold, but the truth of a whisper.